For most of human history, we were not alone. There were other humans, not animals, not monsters, not failed versions of us. Humans, different from us, but still human. Some were stronger, some were older. Some survived in places that would destroy most people today. One kind lived on an island and became only about 3 feet tall. Another is so mysterious, we barely know them from bones at all. And then there were us, Homo sapiens. Today, we are the only humans left. But that was not always true. So the question is simple. What happened to the others? Why did every other human disappear? While we stayed. This is not a story about one disaster. It is not one battle. It is not one moment where we won and they lost. It is slower than that, stranger than that, and maybe more uncomfortable. Because we may not be here because we were the strongest. We may not be here because we were the smartest. We may simply be the last branch still standing. This is the story of the other humans and why they vanished. To understand this story, we have to start with one of the longest-lasting humans who ever lived. Homo erectus. They appeared around 2 million years ago. That number is hard to understand. 2 million years. Everything we think of as human history, cities, writing, empires, wars, religions, machines, the internet, all of that fits into a tiny piece of time compared to them. Homo erectus was here for so long that our entire civilization looks like a short moment beside them. And they were not weak. They were not helpless. They were one of the first humans to look familiar to us. Long legs, shorter arms, bodies built for walking, running, traveling across open land. They were likely among the first humans to leave Africa and spread into other parts of the world. That means they did something huge. They walked into environments they had not evolved for and found a way to live there. They made tools, they hunted, they adapted, they survived heat, cold. Animals, distance, changes in the world, and they kept going for almost 2 million years. But lasting a long time does not mean lasting forever. Near the end, some of the last known Homo erectus lived on the island of Java. They were isolated, far from other groups, with limited space, limited options, and a changing world around them. The forests changed. Animals became harder to find. Their population may have become smaller, and when a population becomes too small, every problem becomes bigger. A bad season matters more. A lost group matters more. A small change in the environment can become impossible to recover from. And slowly, after surviving longer than almost any other human species, Homo erectus disappeared. No single dramatic ending. No one final battle. Just a species that had survived almost everything, finally running out of room. Then there were the Neanderthals. For a long time, people imagined Neanderthals as stupid cave people, heavy, brutal, simple. But that image was wrong, very wrong. Neanderthals were powerful humans. Their bodies were built for cold places, wide chests, strong arms, thick bones, faces shaped for freezing air. They lived across Europe and parts of Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, and they knew how to survive. They used fire, they made tools, they hunted dangerous animals up close, they cared for injured members of their groups, and there is evidence they may have buried their dead. They were not dumb, they were not primitive jokes, they were another kind of human living their own story long before we took over the world. But then, Homo sapiens began moving into the same places, and for a while, we lived side by side, two kinds of humans, walking the same land, hunting some of the same animals, using some of the same resources. And we know something else. We did not just meet them. We had children with them. Their DNA is still inside many people today. That means Neanderthals did not vanish completely. A small part of them continued inside us, but as a separate people, they disappeared. Why? There is no simple answer. Maybe the climate kept changing too fast. Maybe their groups were too small. Maybe they had less contact with other groups, so they could not share tools, ideas, or help as easily. Maybe Homo sapiens had wider networks, more trade, more communication, more people to lean on when things went wrong. And maybe it was all of those things at once. That is what makes their disappearance so haunting. They were not destroyed because they were weak. They survived ice ages. They survived dangerous animals. They survived landscapes that would break most people today. But when the world changed again and Homo sapiens spread into their world, their numbers kept shrinking, group by group, region by region, until one day, there were no Neanderthals left. Then there were the Denisovans, and they are even stranger, because we can barely see them. With Neanderthals, we have bones, skulls, tools, places where they lived. But Denisovans were discovered from something tiny, a small piece of finger bone found in a cave in Siberia. It did not look like much, just a fragment, something most people would never notice. But scientists tested its DNA, and the result was shocking. It was not Neanderthal. It was not Homo sapiens. It was something else, a different human, a human we did not even know existed. That is the strange thing about Denisovans. They are almost invisible in the ground, but very visible in our DNA. Some modern people in Asia and Oceania still carry Denisovan ancestry. And in Tibet, one inherited Denisovan gene helps people survive at high altitude, where the air is thin, and most bodies would struggle. Think about that. A human species we barely know from bones still helps living people breathe in the mountains. That is not a small thing. That means the Denisovans mattered. They lived, they moved, they met other humans, they had children, they left something behind. But as a living population, they faded. Maybe they were spread too thin. Maybe their groups were too small. Maybe climate and geography worked against them. Maybe Homo sapiens absorbed some of them, while the rest slowly disappeared. We do not know everything, and that mystery is part of what makes them so powerful. A human species can vanish from the world and still leave a shadow inside us. Then there was Homo floresiensis, one of the strangest humans ever found. In 2003, scientists found bones on the island of Flores in Indonesia. At first, they seemed impossible. This human was tiny, about 3 feet tall, with a very small brain, so small that some people thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was a modern human with a disease. Maybe the bones were misunderstood. Maybe this could not be a real species. But the more scientists studied the evidence, the clearer it became. This was not just a sick modern human. This was a different human species. Homo floresiensis, a small human living on an island in a world of giant storks, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants. Islands can do strange things to life. Large animals can become smaller. Small animals can become larger. Isolation changes everything. And on Flores, this human species took a path unlike anything else in our family. They were small, but they survived. They used tools. They lived in a difficult place. They were not jokes. They were not mistakes. They were humans shaped by their island world. But small islands are fragile. A small population does not need a giant disaster to disappear. A new competitor, a change in food, a volcanic event, a shift in climate, the arrival of modern humans nearby. Any pressure can become too much, and eventually, Homo floresiensis vanished too. So now we come back to the question, why are we the only humans left? The easy answer is because we were smarter. But that answer is too simple. Neanderthals were intelligent. Denisovans adapted to extreme places. Homo erectus survived for almost 2 million years. Homo floresiensis survived on an island full of danger. So it was not just intelligence. It was probably something messier, something made from many pieces. Homo sapiens were flexible. We moved into new places. We built larger networks. We shared tools. We shared knowledge. We learned from people we had never met directly. If one group discovered something useful, that knowledge could spread. If one place became too dangerous, some groups could move. If the climate changed, we could change strategies. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough. And maybe that was the difference. Not that we were better in every way, but that we were connected in ways that helped us survive change. And there was also luck. That part matters. We do not like to think survival comes down to luck, but it does. Being in the right place, having enough people, meeting the right groups, avoiding the wrong disaster, surviving one bad season that could have ended everything. Maybe Homo sapiens did not win because we were destined to win. Maybe we were just the ones who made it through. The others were not stepping stones to us. They were not practice versions. They were not unfinished humans. They were different answers to the same problem. How do you survive on Earth? Homo erectus answered with endurance. Neanderthals answered with strength and cold survival. Denisovans answered with hidden adaptation. Homo floresiensis answered with island life. And Homo sapiens answered with movement, connection, memory, and maybe luck. For most of history, we were one human among many. The world was not ours alone. There were other faces, other voices, other families, other fires burning in the dark. Then, one by one, they disappeared. Some left bones, some left tools, some left DNA. Some left almost nothing at all. And now, there is only us, the last humans, not because the story was simple, not because the others were weak, but because history crossed a line and every other branch went quiet. Subscribe for more true stories drawn in simple lines.